Today we're talking about imperfect spaces, right? We often like to fantasize and talk about, well, what if I could build the dream studio, and how would I hang the lights, and how would I condition the walls, and how would I soundproof the building? And there are all these different things and different ways that we will modify a space to make it good. But a lot of us are broadcasting or communicating over Zoom through. We're having to shoot in spaces that weren't designed to be a studio. And so whether it's field production or whether it's setting up your home studio in a space that wasn't meant to be a studio, that's what we're here to talk about today when we say imperfect spaces. So there's a lot of things that go into this. We should probably talk about acoustics, talk about how to maximize the space building up, talk about how different camera selection can impact it. And really, the thing for me that brought this up is that I moved recently, and I have about a 6-week delay until my final studio is actually built, where I am trying to do it the right way and flow through them and everything like that. In the meantime, I have a 5-foot ceiling. I can touch it, right? I'm in a tiny little space, and I'm still putting out a reasonably good image. Is it the perfect image and perfect sound that I want to get out for the long term? No. But we're making the most of that imperfect space. So that's really the crux of what we're doing. And we had questions first thing this morning, so I know that we're going to get to those before long. But Alex, you had some comments?
Oh, yeah, just to get started. I mean, go ahead, let Marty go first. I'm grabbing a couple images.
Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead, Marty.
All right. So, imperfect spaces. We work in a lot of different spaces for a lot of different applications, whether we're doing an ENG interview, whether we're setting up a studio, whether we're setting up working out of a conference room. We need to set up cameras, video monitors, and microphones, and lighting as well. All kinds of different situations. One of the biggest problems we have, of course, is acoustics, because a lot of spaces just aren't designed for capturing and effectively reproducing sound. So that's always something that we need to pay attention to. And there are a number of ways to deal with that. There's acoustic treatments on the walls. If you're fortunate enough to be constructing a new room, you can always, and it's always the best way, is to construct it correctly the first time. But I wanted to talk about and show you a recent project that I had. This was for a conference room that I had to redo. So I had this conference room. It's about 40 feet long and maybe 20 feet wide. And there was a monitor up in the corner that you can see, which, is really, really not ideal, because half the room has to turn around to see it. And you can see that short wall there as a window on it. So really can't move a monitor and mount it there. The opposite wall that you can't see is a full glass wall, so that wasn't ideal anyway. So I had to figure out where is a good place to put this monitor and a camera and microphones and such. So what I decided to do was to put a pole from floor to ceiling. It's a 1.5-inch pole, and it's secured to both the floor, which is concrete, and the slab up above, which is concrete. And then I found mounts that I could put this television monitor on. And then there's a stand here with the camera until I found a way to mount the camera to the pole, which I have since done. But then I used a Nariva soundbar, which is a microphone array and speakers built into one device, which is nice because it actually tunes itself to the room, equalization, noise cancellation, and feedback suppression. And I had it on the wall that you can, let me show you here. Mm-hmm. I had it on the wall up here where the sound panels are, because it was a good place to put it. And but the problem was, and this microphone is capable of sending out telemetry data to control the camera, so that we call it voice activation, or so that the camera can follow the source, the direction of the sound in a room. But what I found was that we could not tell the difference between a person speaking at one side of the table and the other side of the table, so that didn't work.
And
so
audio is a huge part of making sure that there's intelligibility everywhere. I think about situations like Todd and Cindy are on the panel today, and they're doing wood turning, and they're in situations when they're broadcasting where there is no quiet. So you've got to also remember, what's the mission? What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to get out the door? If your end product is that you're trying to show someone how to make something, but you're in an inherently noisy environment, that's going to require a little bit more thought in terms of how am I getting that message across. Intelligibility is number one, but how do I get the best possible sound out of that? Alex?
Yeah, and mine are going to be a little bit more of imperfect spaces as far as mobile, like, because a lot of them are imperfect. A lot of this stuff gets imperfect really quickly when you're not building something permanent. So, like and a lot of times you have to look at like what is good versus what is usable versus what is not usable. And so if we look at, sorry, my computer is disagreeing with me here. So if you look at this is in a studio. And so a lot of times you're working around a lot of things. You have recording pieces here, and you're trying to figure out, how do I get the angle that I'm looking for to make this actually work? So figuring out what can you touch, what can't you touch, what can you put things on, how do you frame someone? But each one of these, a lot of times, is the day that you walk in, you're trying to figure this out. You sometimes don't have that. In some cases, a lot of this stuff is portable. This is in a corner, so that is there. And so that was a bunch of monitors that we brought in. But this is all built up the day before the show. You're throwing up all of these things, and thinking about portability is really important as you start to put those things together. Sometimes you're just dancing with the space. So here you have a lot of things this is somebody's house, so you can't hurt anything. You also have natural light coming through the side, which is usually kind of a disaster most of the time. We try to block that out, or a lot of times when you're doing cooking, you're actually looking at a studio, but when you're working in a real house, you're dealing with those things and all the audio reflections that occur. You'll notice in a lot of our stuff that we have, we're goalposting a lot. So you'll see these, and I'll show this a couple times, but you'll see this goalpost. We goalpost a lot because it allows us to throw a bunch of stuff up there without touching the ceiling. This is building into a truck. So this was a van, actually. We need to put something next to in the Sonoma Raceway. We needed to be able to cover something. You can kind of see the raceway back there. And so we had to, how do we get to the side of the racetrack? And a van with a bunch of stuff packed into it turned out to be the solution. By the way, you can do this now, but couldn't do that. You shouldn't have done that back then. These two did not record well. So anyway, it didn't end up mattering, but it was a bummer. You'll see this goalpost again, so you can see the goalposts go across here. So all of this is being goalposted so that we're not touching any part of the set that we're actually in. Here again, one of the things that we do a lot of is build these kits. And so you're getting shoved. This is like a closet that we got shoved into, but these actually span between these two. So this is the end of one of these cases, and so it's designed to span between those, so that when we pull them apart, everything. And this is why it's so important for us to have everything kind of built in. When you see, by the way, producer version of these switchers or the mixers, when you see a producer version, it means it's 19 inches wide, which means you can pull it out of a sled. You can just slide it out to make that actually work. But thinking about these in a very compact way and everything pre-wired helps a lot when you're starting to put that stuff together. This was in a corner of a hallway, we were given 9 days. 9 days to build this. And so from the time we found out the project existed to the time we were shooting was 9 days, and we had to design something that would fit into this corner. And, so a lot of it's truss, because the truss is really easy for us to rent, to bring it in. We actually raised the floor so that we could run all the wires underneath it. And we had them literally cut it to that. We sent someone over the day they asked us if we could do this. We sent someone over and took a bunch of pictures, took a bunch of measurements, put it into SketchUp. Within 2 days, we had it all in SketchUp. We had the client approve it. We started ordering stuff, but like all of this had to be built and printed. This table was built custom. The walls were built out custom. Monitors were rented, and inserted. And all that stuff comes together very, very quickly to make that actually happen. The challenge with this is a great looking studio. The challenge with this is that we had an hour and a half to load in. So all that gear had to be put in an hour and a half before the show started, some A-level celebrities, because it's a museum. This is the Smithsonian. And so you had to, they have people walking through it. And they want the show to happen at 7. They close it at 5:30. What we did is the night before, we rehearsed going in. We figured out what the problems were. We literally built the whole thing the night before and then tore it down and then put it in a staging area to make that actually work. Thinking about portability, these little boxes here are really nice because you can figure out. This is I think it's called the Roticon in Tokyo, and having these little things means we can find where it makes sense on the desks as opposed to having a big case. So when we're doing fly kits, we think about that. This one again is time and also effort. You have to be very careful of a lot of the stuff is really old. So finding, carpet squares and being careful and making sure you don't scratch anything because people get really upset. Here you have, you want it to be, sometimes you're coming in and it's a two-way connection and you want to keep it small. These little things like this are really nice to kind of adjust to it. These are micro grips from, I believe, Matthews, that lets you just kind of rig things up for it relatively quickly. But those are the kind of things, lots of little bits of gear that you can attach to things or not attach to anything. Self-setting helps us adjust for a lot of those things. We use a lot of moving blankets. I'm using them here. Someday I'll do something more permanent, but I have a lot of moving blankets to kind of deaden down the sign. But from a portable perspective, I know that a lot of people are going to talk about studios, but from a portable loading in, every space is imperfect. Like every space is problematic, and you have to kind of figure out how you're going to dance with each one.
And whether it's a studio space or or somewhere where you're traveling to, just because it's imperfect doesn't mean that you don't have time. And when you have time to know where you're going to go and think about and plan for how you're going to attack that, that can be a really big game changer. And it's that previs, Alex said, SketchUp. I did something similar when I was building the studio before I moved, where before I laid any concrete, before I ran any wires, I wanted to see, okay, how is this going to look? And I had to sketch out, okay, what does this space look like? How much space do I have? How do I block off the things that are noisy with something that is going to hopefully deaden them? And then in this program, I could adjust my angle of view and, impersonate a lens just to help me understand what is this going to look like. And then when you actually have dimensions of the space and real dimension of what your gear looks like, then it's a lot easier to move when you're just moving your mouse around. And that reduction in friction of not having to actually pick something up and put it down helps you get a lot more creative. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of address kind of what you said, CJ, about what is your intention with your audio and your studio and all that stuff. And obviously, I'm a wood turner like Cindy. And first of all, I guess I didn't know. Maybe it's just the time to kind of show or talk about my studio space. I think it is, but I'll just carry on. If you need to move on to another question, let me know. So for wood turning, we got a lathe that goes on, and we crank it up to full speed. You want to be able to hear that as a wood turner. So there's the lathe going in my background. If you're watching a wood turning demonstration and you don't hear the tool noise, the lathe sounds, it's a very peculiar and disconcerting sort of event because it's silent turning, which doesn't happen. So you need to include the environment that you're going to be in if you're doing something like that, a craft, whether it's wood turning or woodworking or glass blowing, whatever it might be. You kind of need that. And so my mic is set up it's a head-worn mic. It's wireless because I don't want any wires near this thing. And so I pipe that into my headshot camera because this is the only camera that I see my face on. And so my lips are in sync all the time. I don't have that problem. The other thing I do is in Zoom, I use the low value of noise suppression. If you put it on to full suppression, then you lose all those lathe sounds, the tool sounds, and all that stuff. So I'm always on other wood turning events and saying, hey, go to your Zoom setting, change your noise suppression to low, and at least we'll hear the tool sound. So there's stuff like that you got to be aware of.
Yeah,
I can show a little bit of my space if you need,
well,
but
we can come back. We're going to hop into the questions briefly here,
perfect.
and then maybe get back to the panel. But it's really important what you said about how it would be disconcerting to not hear the sound. When you just see something mechanical with just a very dry voiceover, I feel like I'm watching how it's made, and I kind of lose interest quickly. There's a realness and a connection when you're in that environment. Alexander, let's get to the first. Let's get to the first producer question.
First one comes to us from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Would someone please explain why a shotgun mic should not be used indoors, and does this depend on the size and layout of the space? There's a DP8 microphones article there.
Marty?
Shotgun microphones are devices that have interference tubes, and they are designed to cancel out ambient noise. So ambient noise is fairly non-directional and have nothing to do with the sound source that is in front of the microphone that you're trying to capture. And it kind of works on this principle. So when sound comes in from off-axis, inside the interference tube, it kind of gets canceled out, which is what interference means. But sound that comes from the front of the microphone enter into the tube and enter into the capsule, and that works. Now, the difference is indoors, you have reflections off of the walls. So you may have some ambient noise like air conditioning stuff and traffic noise that come in from outside, and interference tube shotgun microphones will cancel that out. However, when you have reflections off of the walls, that is entering the microphone from a different angle but is related to the sound source that you want to capture. So, you have stuff like this going on, where you have direct sound and reflected sound. And the microphone doesn't know that the reflected sound is related to the captured, the intended sound, and so it cancels it out as well. And that's when you get comb reflections and hollow sounds and all kinds of nasty things. Now, there are differences in shotgun microphones. You have your production length microphone, which can be 12, 15 inches long, but then you also have short shotgun microphones that could be as short as 4 inches long. This one is probably a 7-inch microphone, where this is a 10-inch microphone, but they come as short as 4 inches. And as they get shorter and shorter, they approaching what a standard cardioid microphone would be, and they don't have that interference tube. They cancel sounds in a different way. So a good cardioid microphone and a good short shotgun microphone would work much better indoors than a longer shotgun.
Yeah, and I think if you listen to the show, you can hear a shotgun used indoor all the time. If you listen to Bill's on there. Next question.
Next question is from Cindy Droza in Erie, Colorado. In an effort to keep the dust out of the computer, I put it in an enclosed cabinet with filtered panels and an inline fan for cooling. Any ideas on how much space I need to have around the computer for good airflow?
Jason?
Great question. It depends on which, if this is a high-end computer, of course, it's going to require more air. I would say at least 6 inches on either side, assuming you can push the air through. So you need, of course, intake to be forcing in and then exhaust to be forcing out on the back. And that way the normal airflow circulation is maintained.
Cindy?
Yeah, that's good advice, Jason, that I need forced air intake. I've got a shot of my cabinet here, if you'd like to see. It's right here. I got this cabinet for a smaller computer, and the computer keeps growing. So now it's kind of not a good fit, and I need to make it bigger. I then have a hose going up, and we have a fan and some mufflers, and it's trying to bring the sound and the air out from my my space. So forced air in, I guess, is the question. And then the next question is how to get air air through a filter with enough volume and without the dust coming in at the same time.
Alex?
The first thing that I would do is try to get the computers out of the space. Like I'd put them somewhere else. If it was me, I'd probably try to put them in another location altogether and just run longer connections to them. So I'd stretch out that computer, extending all of my, whether it's USB or HDMI or SDI or whatever. My world lives on fiber, so I immediately go to that. But you can get longer extenders and so on and so forth, and just move the computer completely somewhere to a remote location that isn't in that space. It's going to be a lot better for the computer. If I don't do that, then the second thing that I would start looking at is an enclosed. You can get these enclosures that are going to cut the sound by up to 40 dB of the, sometimes up to 60 dB. So these are enclosures that are designed to be isolated, and then you close them up. In those cases, a lot of times we are doing forced air through them to pull them in. It's not really filtering in the same level that you're dealing with because it's just clean air. It's a clean environment. You're pushing air in one side, pulling it out the other. It's all clean air. It's just tubes going somewhere. So I don't know if that solves your problem. There may be other variables there, but generally I try to keep the computers out of, when I'm in a space that is we've shot in places that are pretty dusty. And usually we try to get the computers out of there, and then we just run signals. And we found that we can run just about any signal, 1,000 feet with a little bit of planning.
Next question.
Matt Halverson in Brookings, South Dakota asks, I had someone ask about a mobile podcasting setup and what they can do to make spaces sound better for their recordings. I told them sound blankets on a stand might be the easiest way to improve sound quality. Any other tips?
Marty?
Yes, moving blankets on stands. So the idea is that you want to kill reflections off of walls and reduce the reverberation in the room. And also you want to cut down on noise from, say, air conditioning vents and such. So moving blankets on stands are a really effective and inexpensive way to control the acoustics in a room and to cut down on noise. Other ways to do it, let's see. So you always want to have, the idea is to have some sort of acoustic conditioning that you're bringing with you, whether it be absorption or diffusion or something like that. That can get expensive and difficult to move because they can be somewhat delicate. So packing blankets is something that we carry around all the time when we go for mobile production.
Nigel?
Yeah, I think obviously packing blankets, moving blankets, all of that stuff is great. Get the microphone closer to your mouth. It's probably the best thing you can do. And then add, maybe if you have a mix pre-3, some noise cancellation. I think, if it's really very mobile, bringing a whole bunch of blankets may not make sense, but having a good mic close to your mouth with noise reduction, noise assist may be the best thing to do.
Alexander?
Yeah, it depends on how mobile we're talking about. So I'll offer some suggestions, but I would say always start with the proper choice of microphone. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use a condenser microphone. You kind of have to test them, but in general, a dynamic microphone will have better off-axis rejection and won't pick up as much detail of what's going on in the room. So you might want to start with that, like something like a Shure SM7B, or on the lower end, then a Shure MV7 Plus, that type of microphone. And then, of course, for cutting down on the reflections in the room, in a more small setup here, you could use something like this, like the Aston Halo reflection filter. Now, I'm not generally a big fan of this type of product, but it does serve a purpose because it's fairly portable and you can just attach it to your mic stand. And these ones are concave not only horizontally but vertically as well, so the sound's not going to hit the ceiling and bounce back into the microphone. And again, you want to get really close to the mic. The other option too, if you don't mind packing a larger bag with you, you can get these types of support systems here, where you can hang heavy moving blankets on that and put that behind you so that the sound doesn't hit that hard surface and bounce back into the microphone. So that's another option.
Alex?
One of the things to look at when you're getting moving blankets is get them heavy. 90 pounds per dozen is pretty much what you want to look at. Also make sure that they're not colored. because that's going to bounce color if you're shooting video. So if you're not shooting video, it doesn't matter. But otherwise, a lot of them come in blue and red and all kinds of other things. What you want is black and white. So you can have black on one side, white on the other. That gives you a lot of choices for bounce of what you want it to look like. The other thing you want is grommets, but most of them won't come with grommets because they're mostly, people will worry about whether the grommets might scratch surfaces that you put a moving blanket around. So a lot of times they don't have any metal grommets on them. So you have to add those. And the most common way to add those is with a hammer. So these are, you have to drive, you have a little pin and you drive the grommets through that. And if you do that, you just really want to focus on what you're doing. Or you'll hit your thumb really hard, so hard that the bone will be sticking out. Ask me how I know. so anyway, so make sure that add the grommets. You do want to add the grommets to what you need, because in a perfect world, what you'll do is you'll pull them together so that they have what we call 100% fullness, which means that if you have a 10-foot a 10-foot blanket, you can pull it in so that it's covering 5 feet across. That's a full 100% fullness. And what that means is you've got all, in addition to the blanket, you've got all these big waves that are grabbing onto a lot of your sound, some of the longer wavelengths as well. And so having them at 100% fullness with moving blankets on, again, stands or C-stands that I showed earlier, that's going to suck up a lot of reflection. And then what you can do is if it gets a little too one way or the other, you can kind of extend them or pull them out. So we end up carrying a bunch of boxes of them, and if in a portable area, we'll go up there and throw them all up there, and it's night and day.
And be on the lookout for the borders on the outside of those moving blankets. I bought a bunch of them and thought, oh, this orange is going to be fine. And then I'm very upset with the orange. Go ahead, Marty.
Now, you can also get these adapters that work like pliers. You can put them on the edge of the blankets, and then they will cinch down, and you force a ring down so it grabs them securely, and then they have a hook or a ring, and you can take them off if you want to. But I do want to reinforce the importance of using the proper microphone. If you're in a room that has very reverberant acoustics, you don't want to use something like an omnidirectional lavalier microphone, because that will just pick up the entire room. Cardioid lavaliers, head-worn microphones, shotgun microphones. If it's a true podcast and you're sitting at a desk, yes, something like what Jason is using right there with an adjustable arm and a microphone with a windshield on it. In front of each person, that works really, really well. The closer you get the microphone, the lower the gain you need and the less room noise you're picking up as well.
Let's transition back. We stepped away from the panel discussion for a moment, but I know Jason brought some stuff to share. So we'll go back into panel for a couple minutes with Jason. Go ahead.
Sure. This is a highly imperfect space. About a year ago, I too had to move, and I had to move into a rented house, and this is a kind of a reclaimed garage. There are hard tiles on the floor, and it's a concrete slab, and all of the angles are 90 degrees, and it's a really, really bad space. There's a giant window here where there used to be a garage door, and the way that I've treated it has been just kind of tit for tat. There is a giant, as you can see, not a moving blanket. It's actually like a comforter, a California king-size comforter, and it's the wrong color, but again, I just didn't have time. And I put highly directional lighting in front of it so that the reflections really aren't going to be messing with it, and there really isn't a color cast on it. Behind me, these are gym tiles that you get at Sam's Club for, yoga studios or weight benches, and they interlock, and it got a whole bunch of the secondary sound reflection completely out of my chain. My other example that occurred to me was recently at NAB. I had to host one of the days at NAB when we were when basically everyone else was doing production. I had to be up at 5:30 to do the hosting, and this was the way that I did it mobily. So of course, I reclaimed the television, and there was a cell tower right outside of my hotel room. I took that secondary sheet and made a giant light. I didn't actually carry any lights at all. And the whole thing, let's see, there it is. The whole thing was the morning light facing east and just directly hitting me. And it ended up working. It didn't drop out. It was a pretty good setup, but it took a considerable amount of planning, and that sheet doubled, of course, as a pretty good way to get rid of any reflection that would have come off of the giant glass sliding door that that I was sitting in front of.
It also goes back to when you're working with a smaller space or an imperfect space, you're still putting out an image, and so lighting is really important. If you are going to be in front of a window that has reasonably consistent light, like when we're in front of windows, I think we're always wishing for overcast days because we're not going to have to worry about adjusting throughout. But that really big source makes a flattering light. To go back to the behind the scenes shot here, what I did on Alex's advice was take a big swath of diffusion fabric, and then I'm bouncing light to it. I'm mounting away from my desk where I can so that I'm not taking it off there. But that big light is causing a bounce. The other thing that I noticed when I was in here, to go back to pay attention to lighting, is that behind me, these bricks were too close to my skin tone. I still think they're too close to my skin tone. But one of the ways that I mitigated that was the backlight here that's throwing a little bit of a wash onto the bricks was set to a considerably cooler color temperature than the key and the fill light. So that way I've helped create a little bit of separation there. Going with a camera that has a larger sensor, if you move up from a webcam to a Super 35 or a full frame and you get more, it's going to make the space feel a little bit bigger so that you have more of a bokeh in the background. It also helps me hide things like, these are the Home Depot bricks that are the panels that are 4x8 panels for $40. But there's a seam in the middle here, and if that were in focus, it would be a lot more apparent where that seam is. And now, I've red-pilled everyone to look where that seam is now, but that's okay. The other thing I'll say for a studio is to look at, for your desk anyway, if you're put whatever you can on arms. Like when I'm in here, I can pick this up and move it so that I can get behind and then access all my computer and my ports and everything else like that. But if I need to switch things around and move, I'm not trying to contort myself into, this imperfect space that has a lot of concrete that's been laid. So again, it's little things to think about: flexibility, think about what you're bringing along. And also it's about being resourceful, not only with using what light is available to you, but also using what tools you have available. I think one of the most fun parts about production for me is I'm problem solving. I have a goal that I'm trying to get to, and nobody's going to judge me on how I got there. They're going to judge me on what it looks like. So I need to figure out, based on all of the ingredients that are in my production pantry, like how can I cook the best possible meal? I've got people coming over in 2 hours, kind of unexpected. I don't have I didn't have a chance to go to the grocery store, so what can I throw together? Nigel?
Yeah, I'm tempted to remind myself of the old phrase we used to do when teaching people to speak in public, that 70% of the effectiveness is what you look like, 23% of the effectiveness is what you sound like, and 7% is what you say. And while people focus on the 7%, they miss the 93.
Yeah, and when your picture looks really good, you sound better. When you go for a really good audio quality, it makes things look better. So that can be that's something to keep in mind, that it's not any one piece. It's all of the little things coming together that give you an overall feeling about how that production looks and how that show is. We'll probably hop in if we have a little bit of time at the end. We can do more show and tell in the studios, but for now, let's hop back into some producer questions, and then we'll come on back. Cindy, go ahead. Or I'm sorry. Next question is from Cindy. Go ahead, Alex.
Cindy's asking, I just put in new LED light fixtures. Now moving my LED task light shows moving lines on the workpiece. What can be done?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, we just had this issue last week, and I was doing this Bloomberg shoot, and it was going to broadcast, but they wanted the records at 1080p 5994. So what's happening is you have a difference between the way that the LED is pulsing, and you're not seeing it with your eyes, but a camera can pick it up because it's happening so fast. So what we had to do with our cameras, we have professional cameras, and you can actually dial in what we call synchro scan. So whoops, that's the wrong one. I was able to adjust into the shutter speed here. And you can see that I went to 62.92, which is a really odd frame rate, but that stopped it from rolling into the broadcast. So it's a matter of, can you change your shutter speed to something that knocks that off, or swap out the lights? So they were using these Chauvet stage lights that were like par big lights, and they were mounted, and I had no control over them. They were already up. They were on truss. I couldn't move them. So I was stuck with them. So the only choice that I had besides getting rid of the light was either changing my shutter speed or changing the frame rate, and I couldn't change the frame rate because they wanted the records at a certain one. So you have three variables that you can work with, and one is just getting rid of that light and replacing it with something that is a more of a film production light. The NAN lights are going to be good. The aperture lights, these modern LED lights built for film and video, are going to not strobe like that. So those are some of your options.
Yeah, I had a similar thing happen, Cindy. Actually, at a concert I was at recently, I was taking some video at the concert, and same thing that Guy's talking about. There was pulse width modulation dimming going on, and I found that I couldn't record in the stock camera app. I had to switch over to the Blackmagic camera so that I would have enough finite control to dial that shutter into where it wasn't causing me an issue. Next question.
Next question is from me. I have treated my room very well. Now I need to fix the windows. Any creative solutions on how I can knock down external street noise? They give something I can use to plug the balcony door and large bay window so I can remove it when I need to.
Go ahead, Alexander. Give us a little bit more.
Yeah, so with the windows right now, I keep them covered. So I actually have 2 layers of blackout curtains, which is basically for the light, essentially, because the blackout curtains don't seem to do much in the way of blocking noise. I have double glazed windows, so that does help. But because I'm next to a fairly busy highway here, if I have a truck go by or a motorcycle go by, and I've looked at it in the terms of the frequencies, it's anywhere from 60 hertz to 150 hertz. I'd like to knock down the overall ambient noise in the studio down another 6 decibels, and I've used an SPL meter. It's fairly quiet, but the problem is, of course, I want to be able to also still open the balcony door if I need to, or open up the window if I need to, because I like to have an air conditioner hooked up to the window in the summertime. So I haven't really seen many solutions for this. I came across one, and it looked expensive because it was custom, and it was something that was like a sheet of acrylic with a rubber molding and handles that you could pop into it to create an air gap. But I'm looking more for like a do-it-yourself type thing.
Marty?
Yeah, so the way to cut down on noise between spaces, we call is to actually plug all the gaps. So while you could put heavy blankets or stage curtains in front of the window, you still have all these gaps around the edges, which is how sound migrates between spaces. And we run into this in our architectural all the time in adjacent rooms or adjacent floors. They need to be constructed in such a way that there are no gaps where sound can migrate between them. And I was actually going to suggest to you something called Indo windows, which get custom fitted to your openings. And I've used these for both doors and windows. There's a flexible seal. They're custom fitted to the actual window, each window space, and they can be removed. They cut down sound as much as 70%. When you install them. And they're not difficult to remove, but they can be kind of pricey because they are custom fitted.
Todd?
Yeah, so maybe a DIY solution. I've used this stuff before, and it's about an inch thick insulation panel, and it's got different R values. You get this at Home Depot or your home improvement store, and it's very lightweight. It's got a silver side and a white side, and so you can cut it to fit your window. Maybe paint it black or something if you want to black out the window. Glue on a little handle onto it, and you can put it up and down. I think that might be, a fairly inexpensive solution. I don't know if you want to black out your windows or not, though, Alexander. So,
Nigel?
Yeah, I think there are two different things on the noise. What Marty was talking about is we had an apartment that overlooked a train track, and while train noise is fine, it was the sharpest turn in the US, and it took gravel trains, and it screeched. We actually had someone come in and put a pane of glass over the glass. As Marty said, it reduced the sound by 70%. When it comes to light in the room, if you're looking at shades, and you can do this not too expensively, you can buy things called channels that the shades go in, so they look like a sort of cup that the shade drops in. And if you do that, you'll take 95% of the light out. And the thing about shades is people tend to look at better shades and go, well, they're so expensive. And then they spend half the amount on poor shades that don't last as long, need replacing more often, and don't work. So if it's a permanent location and you're going to use it, spend the money getting the shades right. Think about channels, and they'll take some of the sound out, but mostly they'll just take all the light out.
Next question.
Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York asks, SD Noise Assist, that's sound devices, NVIDIA broadcast for improving imperfect audio spaces. What other tools are out there?
Alexander?
Yeah, so there are certainly other tools out there for real-time noise processing. I really like the C-Suite software, and this runs on the Universal Audio Apollo interfaces, which have DSP chips on there, so you don't get any latency. So they actually have the C-Suite CVOX, which was designed by Cedar for Universal Audio, and this stuff works exceptionally well, and it looks like it happens to be on sale, $176. You save 40%.
Guy?
Yeah, the Cedar DNS hardware box is what I've seen in rentals. People will buy these things if a client demands, like cicadas noise needs to be taken out in an outdoor shoot, $3,800, and then you would charge the client if you're renting this thing out. It's just an add-on that a lot of folks will use. Earlier today, I had some fans going, and some people commented on my audio sounding a little bit thin, so I'm using Sound Devices Noise Assist, and right now I'm at a -8, but earlier I had fans on, I've turned them off, but here's what I was at earlier. I was at about -13, -14. In this area, you can hear the qualitative difference, and one of the fans is still on, so I'm going to take it to 0, and you'll hear what my room sounds like as I walk it all the way back up. So here is with no Noise Assist. You hear that coming in?
Yeah.
And then back to -8. So just so you get an idea of what you're getting for, I think it's, what is it, $600 or no, $300. 2 channels is 600, but
$300 per channel, yeah.
Per channel,
plus the mix pre.
Plus the mix pre. There you go.
Yeah, and I know a lot of us. Alex was usually uses a mix pre as well, and then I've got one with Noise Assist going here. Yeah, again to call out Bill. Bill has an Apollo interface using the CVOX plugin from Cedar. So again, if you're interested in a live example of what other tools are out there, Bill's mic usually sounds really spot on. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, when you bring in cabling that's too long for a certain space, how do you safely run it so that there's not a trip hazard? Do you use yellow jackets?
Alexander?
Yeah, I like to use these types of metal covers. I'm not necessarily promoting this particular brand. Kind of questionable that it's $40 for this metal thing that they claim supports up to 22,000 pound load on it. I don't know. You might want to test that. But these types of metal things are great, and you buy them in sections and just snap them together like Lego. And they got these big, wide channels in the middle, and you can run a lot of cables. Oftentimes, if I'm mixing at front of house and I need to run, snake wire all the way to the stage, that kind of stuff. You want these types of metal covers because you don't want the audience stepping on cables. Plastic covers will not work. So the metal ones are really sturdy, and they tend to have much larger, deeper channels where you can put a lot of thick wire in.
Marty?
Yeah, cable management on a set or a stage is really, really important to pay attention to because it's can be a safety hazard, not only for the public, but for the talent as well. But I hear two different issues here. First, I hear about cabling that's too long for the application, and so make sure you bundle it up, coil it up, and put it in a safe, out-of-the-way place to shorten it up, and then trip hazard. So that depends on the kind of space that we're working in. If it's a closed set and there's pretty low foot traffic, then you could use carpet runners to basically cover the cables and make it safer. If it's in a public space where you have public traffic there, then you want to do something that's going to be way more secure and more visible, which is one of the purposes of yellow jackets. They can be difficult to transport. They're heavy, they're large, they're long. We usually have these when we need them. We rent them in, particularly when we need a lot of them. And but if it's if it's in a studio on a closed set, depends on the kind of flooring. We could use runners. We could use if it's really light traffic, controlled traffic, like just the people on the set. We could use Velcro carpet tunnels. So from TechFlex, they are fabric strips that have Velcro on them that stick to carpet if it's a carpeted floor. So choose them wisely and them appropriately.
Todd?
Just a caution, if the extra cable is power cable, if you end up winding or coiling it tightly, it could produce a lot of heat. I tend to spread my extension cords back and forth in a way that is not all bundled together to create heat. So if you're pulling a large load on an extension cable, be careful of that.
Next question.
Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York asks, how many times have you arrived to a video shoot where the client wants the big picture window in the background?
How much ND can you bring? Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, no, I'm the sound guy, so I watch what other people are doing, and yeah, that's one of the importances of doing a site survey with the client is to look at the space and see what challenges you have to overcome. And big windows are, rarely ever used on purpose in a corporate space, unless you're using a room that is like all glass and has external windows, and you want to shoot away from it, and you want to put either blankets or ND on the windows. But I do run into this a lot in churches. Some churches, they're really, really fond of the views outside, and that can be really difficult. And ND is your friend.
Next question.
Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania asks, what are effective methods of getting data and internet into temporary shooting broadcasting locations that are remote, buried below the ground, or need to traverse shared spaces to access?
Well, I can't say that I've done a lot of work below the ground, but Josh was actually on the team with me in Ohio when we did the Eclipse shoot, and we did not have a wired internet connection. So we went and we had a Starlink as our primary, and then two different AT&T and Verizon cellular as the backup. And the Starlink worked pretty well, but there was a failure at some point during the show where we had to go ahead and have that backup connection. If you're trying to get out and you're below ground, you're going to need a wire to get out there. So whether you have some sort of sat truck that's on the ground or some sort of fiber connection that's coming in, definitely if you're below grade, it's going to eliminate some of the easier and more straightforward backup options. But like we've said a few times in here, the highest cost of any production is failure, so having those backups is important. Next question.
Robert Shoji in Los Angeles asks, what is a versatile portable background that could be temporarily placed into a space for a video shoot?
Jason?
Glad you asked. Lastolite makes, in fact, I've got it. Let me go wide here. Nope, wrong one. Let's try that again. There it is. Lastolite makes a 6x7 just gigantic collapsible thing with a steel ring all the way around it that you can put on a C-stand. There we go, there. With a magnet, and it works. It works really, really well. It's light, it's portable. The most annoying part about this is the fact that this costs like $100, but it is exactly perfect, and they know they've got you.
Nigel?
Yeah, I use the same thing Jason will be. I'm going to be moving in a few weeks, and that will probably be my background in my new space for a while. Be careful that you don't buy the too smaller one. Too smaller one is not going to give you enough coverage for any distance. And make sure you get the one with the gray. The black and whites are useful, but a bit too contrasty.
Go ahead, Marty.
So we've used muslins a lot for portable work. So a muslin is a very, very large piece of cloth that has been painted or dyed with various colors or designs and meant to kind of blend together as something that is indistinct on camera, but has a certain look to it. You can get them in any color you want with many different designs. Rose Brand out of New York is a popular place to look for these things. And you set them up on stands with the crossbar, and they work really well. You just scrunch them up and put them in a stuff bag, so they're very portable to move. That's another way of doing it.
And the important thing about the muslin is that it is very matte finish. You're not going to get a lot of light reflections off of it. It is going to be a little bit soft for audio, but if you have it pulled taut, you still might get some reflections. But the big thing is that matte finish makes it not challenging for a lighting situation. If the backdrop that you're hanging in, Alexander earlier had an example of what two stands with a crossbar would look like, or Alex had the goal posting example earlier. When you're dropping a piece of fabric down that does have a texture or does have a pattern on it, that's where bokeh is your friend. Things that are not perfect are going to be a lot more forgiving if they're in that kind of milky, nice blurred background. Like even when you have an imperfect background, like again the bricks with the seam, which is there for anybody who's watching along. If it wasn't in the bokeh, it would be a lot more dramatic. So, next question.
Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania asks, what methods and equipment aid in spaces that need to be turned around quickly between venues or for spaces that you can't make permanent modifications for production?
We've talked a little bit about racks or portable racks earlier in the show. Just having things pre-built and pre-wired in almost a modular kind of space before they get brought in. Wheels is a really big deal. So wheels that have the little brakes on them. So however, whether it's in a road case that has doors on it that can open up and then you have racks in there, or if you have something that is not necessarily a rack but is on casters, or if you or not necessarily a road case but that you can throw casters on, that's going to enable you to come in and out. But really wire whatever you can ahead of time so that you're not running around at the last minute and trying to make connections and then realize that, oh, this cable didn't work. Well, if it's plugged in and tested before you get there, it's not going to be an issue. And rehearse. Jason?
You would be shocked what you can put caster wheels on. In the previous studio from a year ago, I had an extremely heavy L-shaped up-down desk, and the whole thing went up and down, and with a series of steel plates and just gigantic caster wheels, I could, with a push, move the entire desk. So, just think and walk into a hardware store, and basically just find someone who knows what they're doing and say, I have this much weight on this many little legs. How can I move it? And you will be surprised at what you can do with the right kinds of screws, some steel plates, a drill press, and good caster wheels.
Todd?
Just quickly, basically the same thing for the wood turning clubs that I belong to, a couple of them. One uses sort of a typical audio video road case and has everything mounted in there, and everything's pre-wired, and so they can roll it in, put up the gantry stage for the overhead cameras, and get set up in about an hour and a half. The other club I belong to, we built a custom cabinet and actually braced everything down. The ATEM is braced down. The computer is braced down. It can flip open. It's all pre-wired. The mixer is all laid down. And so everything's there. They put a cover over top and latch it down, roll it away. All I have to do is roll it out and plug in a few cables, and they're good to go. So that, along with a recipe book of how to do that, how to set it up every time, and a lot of practice, I think helps those people do that.
Marty?
So if we're talking about a production setup where you want to have switchers and monitors and all of your equipment set for production, one of the things that you could look at is a production road case. So this is a case where you can put all of your equipment, all of your setup pre-wired and secured down, and then it folds up into a road case that you can roll into a truck.
Guy?
Yeah, in addition to having all the things like a road case with everything already pre-wired and ready to roll in, we've seen this here locally at the University of Washington. But if you need a background that can pop in very quickly that doesn't require a bunch of light, we've used this product called Reflect Media in the past, where it's basically this gray material that you see in the background here, and you could pull that tight, and then you see right now that is green. So that is actually just that light ring that's in my hand there. And when you put that ring over the top, it turns that blue or green, and you can quickly switch between blue or green. And then you can have a real-time chroma keyer, and you can, like the ATEM Mini for $295. And those coupled together, you can put any background behind you and make that production pretty snazzy. Even in a dingy dungeon, you can make it look like you're in a corporate, multi-million-dollar Fortune 500 facility, all with the trickery of Ultimat and green screen.
Awesome. I did want to take a little bit of a left turn right here at the end and just say hi to Todd and Cindy. We don't see on the panel a whole lot, but we appreciate you being here. And while we have a few minutes left, Todd, I know that you were interested in sharing some of what's going on in your studio, and Cindy, you're welcome to as well if you'd like to. But go ahead, Todd.
So this is the view from the Avaya Huddle Cam. It's sitting on my middle of my garage, hanging off my garage door opener. So this is a standard two-car garage. And this side of this is my studio, tool cabinet behind me, AC unit up there. I do have a green screen up here that normally comes down. It's on auto poles, and then the lathe, and then a bench behind me where everything is mounted. So the cameras, monitors, ATEM Mini, all the wiring is back there. So if this lathe shakes, the cameras aren't shaking. Let's see, overhead camera is a BGH1. Face camera is a studio camera 4K. And the little micro studio camera over there. A G85, Sony RX 100, and Stream Deck monitors and stuff like that. So got any questions about how this operates?
And notice how we have a smaller layout on the actual desk that's been built up, and now we're able to, through a series of whether it's arms or poles, mount things above. But also, there's not room for a Stream Deck in there. Not even a Mini, much less the regular Mini, but much less an Extreme. So the fact that Todd has the buttons laid out exactly how he wants them, and it's on a fairly complex form factor, that allows him to quickly switch without needing to be, without adding a lot of commas in his brain manually. So, yeah, that's really cool. Cindy, did you have anything? I didn't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, sure. I'm ready to show my place. Here it is. I don't have as wide angle of a camera, but so you can't see most of the cameras in the shot, but what you can see, I think, is I can navigate over to, I've got two computers on board here, and I've got a whole bunch of controllers of various kinds. This one here is a gaming joystick arrangement, and pan tilt and slider for one of the cameras, and my main control panel here is this little keyboard.
Courtney
Stream
talked
Deck
about
does a
that the
few
other week.
things.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it works.
So that's a really, I mean, those are some pretty custom control solutions. And again, it's a back end, so it's not that it has to necessarily look super dressed up. It's really about, ergonomically. I see you even have two of those keyboards there. Ergonomically, where is the tool that you need when you need it in the right place?
And
That's
of
really
course, you
great.
can see tools over here for work. But yeah, they say don't put the tech in the shot, but that's kind of, in my case, impossible. I just can't show what I need to without any tech in the shot. So the woodturners just have to live with it.
Yeah, but I think when you're making things, when you're physically making things, people want to see how it's made. People are looking to see not only how is the wood turning, but they're probably curious to understand, okay, well, how is this getting to me and how are they controlling it? I think that stuff's really cool. Appreciate you all being on and for sharing with us. That's great.
You bet. Hey, CJ, just before you cut out,
yes, sir.
Just wanted to say if you want to check out some wood turning, Cindy's doing a live stream this afternoon. You're still on, Cindy, right? Yeah, she is.
Absolutely.
So you'll see her in action in a couple hours. So
that's awesome.
Check that out on YouTube. So.
Well, thanks, Cindy. Thanks, Todd. Thanks to all of our panelists for being here in the first hour and in the second hour. It's a really much less interesting show without all of these, with all the brains in the room. But because, no one of us, certainly not me, is as smart as all of us. And man, did we have a tremendous amount of experience joining the panel today. Thank you for willingly sharing that expertise. It's so nice. Also, thank you to the folks volunteering on the back end. They're getting up early, staying up late, making us look and sound good, helping everything run on the back end, even in the midst of a global IT meltdown and lockout, blue screen to death. Office hours still went on, and that's due in no small part to the folks on the back end, so we thank them profusely. And if you're interested in seeing how you might want to help on the back end, not only during the show, but also around the show, you can check out our new volunteer meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Central. Also, thank you to all the producers who are asking questions. This show runs on your questions, and it's a short show without them. Show runs not only on your questions, but also on your generosity. So if you're getting some value out of the show and you'd like to support it, consider giving back at officehours.global/donate. Tulalip Traversal today, 31,000 miles. That's 49,000 kilometers, 242 million. Bananas for scale. We'll see you in After Hours.
Sorry, CJ, I missed it. Where was that seam again?
I don't think I'll stop seeing it now.
You're stuck. That's okay. It's only for a few more weeks. Construction begins the week of the 5th.
No, it's the things we catch that that bother the living daylights out of us that nobody else, and until you just can't help it. It's like, no, I can't. I gotta share it.
It was the light. The thing that did it was when I added that backlight was finally, I feel like it's much more visible here with the shadow from the key. When I threw the fill on the underside of where the shadow line was, it hid much better. But anyway, that's and I have a bunch of clamps on top trying to make sure it stays perfectly square, but I still